You can't talk about listening, I don't think, without talking about holding space. And I have been successful a few times in my life in holding space for other people. And it really feels good to me. And of course, that means that I am silent, I am present, and I am not giving advice. I'm not making a plan of attack so they can be fixed in some way. It's just a whole different experience just to be present and to hold space for someone. I remember I danced mostly on Sunday morning with a group of people who do not talk to each other. We just dance. And I saw a young girl one time, and I just picked up, because when you're quiet, you are more intuitive and you can pick up things. And I picked up that this girl was very upset or disturbed about something. She was not happy. And I observed her, and finally she went over in the corner and she was crying, and she had her hands like this, and I thought, oh dear. And just like that, I went over and sat down right in front of her, facing a different direction, but she was blocked. I felt like she was safe. I felt like I was protecting her. I felt like I was there for her, even though I didn't know her. And that's an experience I had of holding space for someone that I think was worthwhile. Another time I remember holding space for someone was a guy that I dated, big old burly kind of guy, and I was present with him when his cat died. We were at the vet's and we got in the car, and he went to the park, and I got out of the car when he got out of the car, and he sat on a rock and I sat nearby, and he bawled for maybe 30 minutes. And I just sat there quietly, and I felt like I was holding space for him. I have another friend named Jen, and she called me one time and she said, my mother died. And I said, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I went over to her house, and of course she had lots of things to say, lots of things to express, and I was just there. I didn't give her any advice. I didn't tell her it was better maybe if her mother was sick and uncomfortable, that she'd see her later in heaven. I didn't do any of that stuff. I was just present, and I just held space for her. Another friend of mine had a husband that came home unexpectedly and said, I want a divorce, I'm moving out. The way I held space for her is she said to me, I've never been by myself. I've never stayed all night by myself. And I said, I'll be over at 10 o'clock. Every night for the next 5 nights. So I held space for her by showing up and sleeping at her house and making her feel safe and protected and make that transition. I had an experience recently where I was triggered by something in terms of a man talking to me, and I was having a nice conversation with him, and he was my age, and he seemed interested in talking to me, and all of a sudden my attention was diverted by someone who wanted to know if we were putting the chairs up. When I turned around, a younger woman in the group was talking to him, and I couldn't get a word in edgewise. And then I was distracted again, and the next thing, she had him over sitting down on the sofa, eye to eye with him. Then I saw them change business cards. Then on the way out, I thought, well, I'll get to speak with him on the way out. But just as he got to me to say something, she yelled out, see you Saturday night. I was triggered by, I always have difficulty with men, younger women move in, I'm older, things never work out, I'm never good at relationships, so I was triggered by that. And there was a person in the group who said, calm down, sit down here with me on the sofa. And she took my hands and she said, breathe. And then she said, you are a beautiful woman, things are going to manifest in your life. And I was like, I don't want to be fixed. I don't want to hear this, and I don't want you to hold my hands. When I was a kid, one way that my mother corrected me and got my attention is she'd grab my hands and get right in my face and say, you are not to do that again, or whatever. So I felt that I was being disciplined by that behavior, and that she was trying to fix me, and all I wanted her to do was just hear me out and be present and be a whole space for me. It didn't happen. So I was thinking we just need to be better at holding space for people. And I think I talk a lot about death, and I talk a lot about grief. And I think a good portion of that is about being present and not saying anything, not fixing it, not making them feel good, let them have their own experience. And one of the things about letting people have their own experience is not touching them and talking, because you take them out of their experience. The woman that took me out of my experience didn't allow me to reflect on what was happening and to be present with what was happening. The question today is, how can we be better at holding space for other people?